Yeah, I feel like one interesting economic milestone we hit was just a few months ago when every government in the world acknowledged large amounts of consumer inflation, CPI and producer inflation, and it was acknowledged as an issue. I feel like a year ago it wasn't acknowledged, but today it is acknowledged. And probably the big economic driver that will continue will just be inflationary public policy. And if we acknowledge that we've got 5 or 6 or 7% inflation, there's no central bank in Western Europe or the United States that has articulated a plan to raise interest rates to 5 or 6 or 7%. So we're sitting in a zone for the next 3 to 4 years where it looks like we've got negative real yields, we've got continuing inflationary policy, and the discussion has moved into mainstream, the discussion of stagflation. And I guess what we saw, which was interesting in the past month, was we saw a crisis of confidence in the equity market, right? That brought, it used to be Bitcoin was a very volatile asset that may or may not be an inflation hedge. And now equity looks like a very volatile asset that may or may not be an inflation hedge. And so you've got the mainstream apparatus, mainstream media, mainstream investors acknowledging crypto and Bitcoin as an asset class versus property versus bonds versus equity, no safe haven, and a mutually agreed problem. And I guess one last point I make is I hear rumors from all my contacts that there's an avalanche of macro hedge funds coming into the space, setting up accounts, like an increase by almost an order of magnitude. It used to be there was 1 or 2 macro traders, and now I think a lot of hedge funds are setting up accounts, and their view is we have to trade this stuff. Whether or not they'll stand up and say, I want to hold $1 billion or $10 billion of it for a decade, well, we're still waiting for that. But it seems like at the end of the year, at the end of 2021, I heard all sorts of stories that, conventional macro funds yielded 3 or 4% ROI in the year, and crypto hedge funds had 500% returns in the year, and 200% returns, and some at 1,000% returns, and 100% returns. So if there's anything that people understand on Wall Street, it's money. Someone made 10 or 100x as much trading that volatility. Whether or not I'm ready to marry this asset, I'm sure that I want to trade and I want to be engaged. I can't afford to ignore this. And that's kind of the message that we're hearing even from the big bulge bracket banks on Wall Street, that, I'll paraphrase them, this is not going away. We need to figure it out. I think a lot of people in the United States, they haven't lived under hyperinflation, and also they erroneously think that their real estate holdings or their equity holdings are not currency derivatives. They think that their exposure to inflation might be holding currency or holding low-yielding bonds, but they don't really think about their other assets as having a currency risk. Whereas if you live in Argentina or Venezuela or Zimbabwe or if you live through a currency collapse, you realize that the currency is exposed, the sovereign debt is exposed, right? Those countries default on their sovereign debt all the time. Argentina, in essence, renegotiated $50 billion of sovereign debt a week ago, so they're always defaulting on debt. But it turns out that if you have all your assets in a local business or local stocks, those get crushed too when the currency collapses, because their revenues and cash flows are in the local currency. So if you've got a 50% inflation rate, the cost of not embracing Bitcoin is 50% of your assets would be lost to you, or 50% of your currency derivatives in 12 months. So the cost of doing nothing, the hurdle rate or the risk rate is 50, 60, 70, or 100% in those environments. So you're a fast learner. And I think that, and it's pretty obvious I can't hold the currency, and I can't buy a market basket of local stocks. And a lot of the people in those countries can't buy S&P indexes. They can't, because of capital controls. Pretty difficult, to get past your capital control to invest large sums of money in another nation. So I think that the political dynamic here is the hyperinflation and the rampant inflation in the non-Western European, U.S. developed world is actually a massive, aggressive catalyst for Bitcoin adoption that it's not going to stop right anytime soon. And this is the first currency crisis where Bitcoin existed. A decade ago, in every other currency collapse, right, in the developing world, they never had a Bitcoin. So we don't really have any experience with what happens, except that we have anecdotal evidence to suggest that in Nigeria and Venezuela and Argentina and Turkey, people are getting crypto sophisticated at a pretty rapid rate. And we know the two things they like. The one thing they want is they want US dollar stablecoin. We went from $30 billion to $150 billion of stablecoin in 12 months. So we know they want that, right? They want to go from weak currency to strong. And the second thing they want is they want to go from weak property to strong property. And the strongest property would be Bitcoin. I think that that's a driver. Yeah, the major regional dynamic is this migration of digital property from the east to the west. Screaming home run for North America, right? Devastating economic loss for China. It kind of speaks to their lack of respect for property rights and the capital controls. But I hear that you can't actually own land in China. You can have a 70-year lease on land, or you're leasing everything at the pleasure of the government, or you have your business, you have your land, you have your property at the pleasure of the government. Now, if the Chinese and that entire regime dismisses digital property, presumably that's going to hold back their economic growth over the next 100 years, but not that they care. I suspect they might do a 180 and turn around at some point, just like certain other regimes have. But I suppose right now the primary dynamic has been just this China exodus and massive dislocation.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.